Welcome to something special. Welcome to TEDx. This TEDx event is part of a global conversation that takes place every day in every corner of the world. In schools, in theaters, in workplaces, even in prisons, people gather to hear the best ideas bubbling up in their communities. More than 3,000 TEDx events are held every year in 170 countries. It's a remarkable thing. TEDx events are self-organized under a license from TED, a non-profit organization devoted to discovering and sharing powerful ideas in the form of TED Talks. It's not TED itself, but your local TEDx team of volunteers that has done all the work to put on today's event, including booking all of the speakers. It's this team's ideas, dedication, and time that have made this possible. We really hope today's program sparks an exciting conversation. This is a day for curiosity and for skepticism, for inspiration and for action. The more you enter into it, the more you will take out. And now, on with the show.
Thank you for taking the time to come and be part of TEDx Noah Libraries 2020. All around our region and state, across the country and around the globe, people just like you and me are hungry for ideas and information. We all want to know more, to imagine, and to understand. And TEDx events are organized to provide opportunities to connect us with ideas worth spreading. The TED organization has granted a license allowing Snow Owl Libraries to independently organize this local TEDx event. Because at its core, your public library is all about providing you access to ideas and information. We've worked with some amazing individuals from our region to share some of these ideas with you. Now, the really hard work to make this happen has come from each featured speaker and all those who've worked behind the scenes. So we invite you to sit back and imagine you are sitting in the largest theater ever. In this virtual space, we are choosing to be safe, exercising our social distance, and other members of the audience are also choosing to be present. We are all expectant, ready to think deeply, and we are reimagining the quantum connections between ideas and realities. And now, on with the show.
Hi, and welcome to TEDx Snow Owl Libraries 2020. I'm your host, Phil Klein, and in this online event, we'll be sharing a TEDx talk and holding a conversation with the speaker to dig deeper into their ideas for greater understanding. And with me are also a team of moderators and a co-host to provide any support we may need. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today and to explore these ideas worth spreading. If you're joining us on the webinar at Zoom, you'll be able to ask questions, and you will also be able to do that on Facebook Live or in YouTube. We encourage you to share your questions, or if something strikes or inspires you, please feel free to share that as well. Here with me today is Elizabeth Johnson, who is a veterinarian who has been working with animals, with dogs, with horses, and with exotic animals for over 35 years. She has a deep gift for connecting and relating with them. And she's here to share with us her talk about connecting with dogs in particular and how they age. Elizabeth, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Phil. Glad to be here.
It's so great to see you and to be together. I'd love to start off by hearing from you. What is it that made you feel like this was the talk you wanted to give and this was the right time to give it?
Well, in my practice, for many, many years, I've had a lot of clients with old dogs and old aging relatives. And they've shared with me the challenges and the struggles they've gone through with the aging processes of those they love. And I've also had similar experiences in my life. And so At one point, I noticed that there were a lot of parallels and there were a lot of patterns I was seeing. And so I started writing a book. And excuse me, during my book writing, I had a 16-year-old dog in my home, Louie, and I had, a live reference material right there in my home. So that was really helpful. And when Louis passed at 17, I was nosing through some local newspapers that I hadn't gotten to, and I saw a notice for the Snow Isle TEDx submission. And when I saw it, my whole world shook. And I just thought, oh my God, I have to do this thing. And so I looked at it again and my world shook one more time because the due date was the following day. And so I spent all day that Sunday writing and videoing and writing and videoing and writing and videoing some more. And I got my submission in the morning and was invited to do this TEDx talk. So I'm really grateful to be here and share this message.
That's great. So you translated this idea you had for a book to be presented in this format. Mm-hmm. It is a truly fascinating talk and a fascinating window both into thinking about aging as we have aging relatives or as we age ourselves, and also how we relate to the way dogs age and how they see aging and how they experience it. Why don't we go ahead and watch your talk? Please relax and enjoy this talk by Elizabeth Johnson.
Some of you have aging dogs in your life, now or in the past. Some of you have aging relatives needing care. I'd like you to think about some interesting parallels between aging dogs and aging humans. I'd also like to help you explore some simple but potent pack tools to better interact with our elderly adults needing care. Now, my aging relatives don't like being compared to old dogs, well, except maybe my Uncle Don, and he's always been my favorite. First, let's talk about what the parallels are between old dogs and elderly humans. Here's 4 you might recognize. Both old dogs and elder humans make conscious choices to move less and do less. When they do move, things hurt and they're stiff and their movements and reactions are slower. Another is their circadian rhythm gets flipped, so they sleep most of the day and they're awake all night. How many times have you heard your old dog or maybe a relative padding around at night? I caught my mother moving furniture one night at 2 a.m., which was a bit unnerving. They also become picky eaters and they eat less as their systems slow down. So we should try to think ahead about what their favorite foods are. My old dog Louie loved chicken and smelly goat cheese and ate that up till his last day. And last but not least, change. Change is a big one. Changes such as moving things in your house, in their house, or relocations can rock their worlds and increase stress and decline dramatically. Some of these household changes are unfortunately unavoidable, but when we can, we should try to keep things as close to their normal as possible. As their organs, body, and mind gradually slow down, their world gets smaller. The world is now opening up, however, to this idea of learning from our old dogs to help our geriatric humans. Recently, a University of Washington professor asked me about my work with animals and the book I'm writing on the parallels of old dog and human aging called The Tao of Old Dogs. He shared with me a project that University of Washington and Texas A&M are collaborating on called the Dog Aging Project, or DAP. DAP will study 10,000 dogs across the U.S. to identify the environmental, biological, and lifestyle factors that contribute to healthy aging and then cross-pollinate that into the human geriatric world. This study is actually funded by the NIH, the National Institute of Health, to directly benefit geriatric humans. The premise being that dogs, in living so closely with humans for centuries, acquire the same big 4 age-related diseases as us: cancer, diabetes, heart disease, and even dementia. It takes a much shorter time to study dogs as they age than humans. So DAP can gather data and study the same lifestyle and disease aspects in 10 years of a dog's life versus 50 years of a human's life. I was so excited to see this dog-human aging connection being recognized and studied on a grander scale and validating this commonality that I've been observing in my practice for many years with animals and their humans. What I've also seen in my work is that many people can find deep compassion and patience for their aging dogs, but not always for their aging humans. With our mother or father, we can be trapped in this weird time warp of role reversal that can be hard to understand and very hard to navigate. Our emotions run amok, creating frustration, fear, grief, detachment, apathy, sadness, all common and perfectly normal. I think those of us who have dogs feel these same emotions for our old dogs, but somehow we are a whole lot kinder about dealing with their needs and wants. Why is that? What if we could have a choice in how we interact in these relationships with our aging human relatives needing care? What if we could cross-pollinate our feelings we have for our old dogs to reframe our ways of feeling and being with our aging senior relatives? For our old dogs, we can find patience, acceptance, compassion, and kindness more easily. Yeah, our agendas and emotions trip us up at first, and we try to push our little old dogs past their limits, but we eventually settle into a place where we find peace in their aging process. A place where every moment we have with them is precious, no matter if there's incontinence, lack of energy, frustration over food, grumpiness, sleepless, noisy nights for both of us. We find that patience, acceptance, compassion, and kindness to be the loving caretakers that we all have inside here. Recently, I was working on a little 6-pound Yorkie named Lilypad with a sore back, and in what seems to be a common conversation with my clients, I asked Lilypad's mom, Mary Lou, how she was doing with her mother who had dementia. She profoundly and lovingly said, "We must meet them where they are at any given moment. We can't change who they are. We can only change ourselves and how we think about the situation. Dementia patients are like animals and children. They feel the world around them. They are honest and in the moment, and also very aware and present with what we are feeling while we're with them." That is a potent mouthful of wisdom for us all. The most difficult parallel to discuss is dementia. Statistics show that there are 50 million people worldwide that have dementia. This number will almost double every 20 years, reaching 75 million in 2030. Due to the fact that there are no official geriatric studies on this yet for dogs, we don't know any numbers, but we absolutely know it exists for them too. My mother had dementia. Every day I would take her out for a walk in her wheelchair, and I came to realize if I went the same way each day, she was emotionally more comfortable. She was not a woman of the outdoors, nor did she appreciate nature. Yet, if I kept things consistent, she had forgotten she didn't like the outdoors and clearly enjoyed the fresh air and sunshine she so badly needed. As we'd slowly dawdle along, she would always point to the same bush in the same yard and say, "Darling, isn't that lovely? What is that?" Day after day, I gave the same answer. Next, we'd see a sweet blue birdhouse on a fence post, and she would say, "Look at that! Isn't that nice?" Each day I would agree. This repetition rattled me at first. At the time, I was easily rattled, as I was running a busy practice, nursing a very dear friend that was dying of cancer, visiting my mother daily, and my 15-year-old dog Cedar, who went everywhere with me every day, was starting down the path of doggy dementia. So I made a choice to rest in the consistency and familiarity of this daily walk routine that Mom had relaxed into, and in doing so, I made peace with myself. I began to call it Groundhog Day. I had to find the light, beauty, and a sad bit of whimsy in this change in my mother, and also in the irony that it was this comfortable repetition that filled her with contentment. I had to let go and erase my fear of losing my mother as I knew her and embrace that peace that came with Groundhog Day's repetition. I thought of how patiently I had walked the same trails, sidewalks, and roads with my dogs each day, seeing the same trees, houses, and meadows. I suddenly realized I had been following the Groundhog Day model since owning my first dog. Dogs need consistency and find comfort in familiar routines just as human dementia patients do. For dogs, every day is Groundhog Day. Wow, what a revelation. I could do this thing. So finally, here's the 4 potent pack life lessons my dogs and I created based on Dog and Life Training 101 that we can use in our interactions with our elderly 2-leggeds and 4-leggeds. I call these the pack. P is for patience, A is for acceptance, C is for compassion, and K is for kindness. P is for patience. Sit and stay. Picture the adorable wiggly puppy running around like crazy, and in 1 or 2 sessions and some yummy cookies, he learns the sit and stay request that may save his life someday. He is now transformed into this little patient being that is actively communicating with us, and of course the cookies in our pocket. Can we transform our own inner puppy? Yes, even if we fake it at first, we can learn to adopt patience and kindness even when the world is buzzing and screaming and blurring around us. Usually patience and calmness is what we humans learn to teach our dogs when we go to puppy obedience school. And if we're really lucky, what we learn too. It's the first thing your old dog does when you grab a cookie for him, right? Sit and stay. They never forget. Before I revisit with my mom in her dementia years, I'd sit in my car and I'd do a 30-second self-check to increase my patience with whatever I might encounter that day. Release the rushing, the cases I saw today. Take a deep breath and let the buzzing vibrations fly out the window. Breathe into my heart, even the aching part. Now open my heart and breathe again and warm up a remembering smile for the love I have for my mother. Feel my feet on the ground, the strength in that love, and here we go. Occasionally a tear or two would fall, and for that moment I thank them for their healing and stride on in, arms and heart wide open. A is for acceptance, meet and greet. I don't know about you, but I love Labradors. They are always accepting of other dogs, good people, and change. They almost never are bullies in a group dog interaction, but are accepting and willing to play with others, small and large. They love play, they love life, and yet they have this amazing work ethic and willingness to please. They're incredible, tireless service dogs, fully accepting the consequences of most situations and never asking for anything in return other than a tennis ball, a hug, and dinner. In my next life, I'm hoping to come back as a Labrador. Acceptance allows us to move forward and not be stuck in emotions that don't serve us or others. As we become caretakers on any level for our elderly, even just occasional visits, we have to learn to accept our own emotions about their situations and, for the benefit of others, temporarily let go of our own emotions so we can be fully present in any situation. This is what our first responders do for us all the time. They accept any situation they're called to, and during that time of response or service, they are clear, solid, and willing to use their tools to help others through challenges. Just like a lab. If our dogs can do this, so can we. I had a yellow lab named Sage who, as a puppy, went to school with my teacher husband and by her own choice became a service dog for children with epileptic seizures, ADHD, and a reading with Rover dog before there was such a thing. She was amazing at knowing who needed what when. When she retired at 15, she was bored, so I took her to a nosework class. She had a growing tumor on her nose from a rattlesnake bite when she was 3, And her last service to the world was a nosework demo we did for the American Cancer Society. She did amazing, all dressed up in her pink gear. The crowd roared. She was a gentle teacher for others about finding some acceptance and joy during life with cancer. C is for compassion. Stop and smell your own roses. Everyone knows that dogs have an amazing sense of smell, and they know what we're thinking and feeling even before we do, as do our wise old elder humans with a whole lot of life behind them. Even in a dementia state, they are often aware of our feelings. The question here is, what are you carrying into your interactions with your beloved elders? Is it the sweet, rosy essence of compassion, or the thorny, pokey feeling of fear, angst, or apathy? We cannot bring compassion forward under stress without self-awareness. We have the power to choose to smell like a rose or poke like a thorn. Dogs and dementia patients feel our emotional vibrations and can teach us to be more aware of these by mirroring responses to us. We just have to pay attention. Have you ever felt angry with something and your dog drops its ears and gets flat and tries to look invisible? Did you ever feel some fear while walking your dog and have your love everyone labs suddenly start barking at someone? They don't get caught up in or hang on to emotions unless we do. Human dementia patients are the same way. They can feel our emotional vibrations and can respond by shutting down or lashing out. We need to ask ourselves, which emotion am I wearing and which emotion do I want to wear? K is for kindness, release and reward. We all need and want kindness, right? Our animals respond better and on a much deeper level when we utilize kindness instead of scolding. Our children do too. Our elderly relatives are the same way. No matter what challenge they give us, kindness will always be the best medicine for both them and you. Kindness echoes out into the world. The rewards go both ways when we release kindness into any situation. I know dogs and animals are our teachers and can help us navigate difficult challenges with life and our elderly seniors, and in doing so can help us heal too. They can guide us to be stronger, kinder people and remind us to make wiser choices during our interactions with our elderly and the world around us. So my hope is that you will be the patient, accepting, compassionate, and kind pack leader that can make the world a better place, one pack at a time.
Whoa, thank you so much, Elizabeth. That was really a great lesson in leading a pack. I feel like all of the listeners, and definitely me, feels like we're part of your pack now. And that really kind of goes to my first question, but I realize now you've already kind of answered it. You've done this sort of magic trick by leading us as a pack leader would, with information and understanding that's a little bit ahead of us, so that it's there when we need it. And that's exactly what your pack skills really are. They kind of think about where we can be ahead of the Groundhog Day that the people and dogs that we love may be experiencing. Can you say a little more about what it means to be a good pack leader?
Well, I think being a pack leader is really about how one person can make so much difference by the way they choose to act in any given situation, be it challenging or stressful or even just courteous. So I really think all about is our personal choices and trying to walk a good road with that. So, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not necessarily a grand or a deep responsibility on a moment by moment basis. It can merely mean being present and having the right presence in the moment as we go along.
Right, right.
And when you're helping pets deal with aging, what can help most if they're having difficulty sleeping?
Well, as strange as it sounds, Phil, we can help them get better sleep by helping their liver detoxify. And there's certain ways we can do that. First, the liver gets congested. With old age, we reduce our exercise. And so there's not as much blood flow through the liver. Stress of pain and just general interactive stress with the world around them can create liver congestion. Toxins, as we all know, medication can create stress. And so what happens at that time frame is as the liver gets stressed, we don't sleep as well. In Chinese medicine, there is a 2-hour window in the middle of the night that is liver time, and that's from 1 to 3 a.m. And so at that time, our liver is working really hard for us, detoxing our body, cleansing all of our blood. And if we've got all this liver congestion from aging, medication, lack of exercise, stress, then we are not able to actually, our body's on overload for cleansing. And so we're not able to sleep well, basically. And I think humans have experienced that before. If they've, who knows, drank too much one night or something, they wake up in the middle of the night and they're wide awake. And so that's the biggest thing. And what happens when the liver does that and keeps us awake is it starts to progressively get the body to do this circadian shift. So they sleep more in the day and they're awake more at night. And so we have some opportunities with diet, exercise, and stress reduction to help that. And diet's fairly simple. Green leafy vegetables like kale are great for dogs and humans. Beet greens, beets occasionally. I like to make hot water with lemon and honey, and that's a wonderful, gentle liver detoxifier for our elderly and for us. And that mechanism works during the day because we're eating, we're digesting, it's infiltrating into our system. So that helps that detoxification at night not be so heavy for the liver. One caveat to that is if people are on medications like blood thinners or some other medications, some of those dietary changes are not possible. So you need to check with their physician or their veterinarian to make sure that and okay that. And then in the exercise category, more frequent and less duration is better. So shorter walks, more frequent in the day, will help keep that blood flow going in the body. And just having your blood flowing helps your liver deal with everything it has to deal with. So for dogs and humans, in Chinese medicine, again, we have a time from 5 to 7 p.m. every day where our kidney and adrenal system is working hard for us. And the adrenal glands give us energy. And so if our adrenals are healthy, it uplifts our energy. So we want to go do something between 5 and 7. And so it's a great time after dinner to take your dog for a walk. If you're visiting your aging relative, take them for a walk. Get them out, get them moving. And I can guarantee that'll help their sleep. More frequent exercise and lesser duration of exercise. And lastly, the stress reduction. I use this term interactive stress. And interactive stress to me is stress with the world around them, stress in relationships with people, stress with change. So animals as they age, and animals in general, but also people as they age, are really sensitive to that. And so if we can reduce that by using our PAC tools, patience, acceptance, compassion, and kindness when we're with them, we can reduce some of that interactive stress for them. And also being mindful of changes and keeping changes simple for them and keeping routines rhythmic for them. So, so those are actually will all give us better sleep at night should we follow those rules. So that's a long answer, but oh, I think you're muted, Phil. Yeah, there you go.
Sorry about that.
That's
yeah,
okay.
I was thinking of the 4 big areas you had mentioned, right? Cancer, change was one of them, sleep, and dementia. And you covered dementia, I think, fairly thoroughly in your talk, but we may want to come back to it as well. But in thinking about this, it's interesting to think about how sleep is related to diet and exercise as well, and that patience in relation to change is an important element to keep considering. So when you kind of move into the, let's say, more intensive illnesses for an aging dog, are there some suggestions that you have for helping them cope as it gets increasingly difficult?
Helping the dogs cope? Or the
I guess
humans?
it's really a joint question for the dog's parent or their owner and the dog themselves. What's supportive as things become acute, or if there's a period of acute stress?
Right. I think one of the biggest things is being really present, as you talked about, with their limitations, their needs and wants, the changes, and accepting those changes. Finding some patience with yourself, because you're going to have emotional responses to that, whether it's an aging dog or an aging human. And recognizing those emotions and working with them, feeling them, crying if you need to, and then kind of pulling yourself together in a sense so that you can stay fully present with what's going on. I think that's one of the best ways for the humans. Depending on the situation with the dog, and I'm not a medical doctor and I'm not a veterinarian, but I've dealt with a lot of acute situations in animals, and I think we have a lot to work with out there. And I think it's knowing the animal, knowing the situation, and it's a very varied answer that I could probably talk about all night with different situations. So, decline and aging, unfortunately, are part of our lives, and accepting that is not easy for any of us. But we do need to have a level of acceptance so that we can actually deal with the process in the best way we can for them and for us. So
The gift of our inner Labradors coming through when we need them most.
Yeah.
When you think of how dogs relate to other dogs as they age, and perhaps how dogs see the aging of dogs around them, do you gain any thoughts or insights about how animals see aging?
Well, I see other animals watching aging, and I see typically 2 types of scenarios. The first one is some dogs become eyes, ears, voices, and guardians for their elderly pack mates. And we love that. That's just a beautiful thing. And then other dogs have this take down the ailing pack leader scenario. And that's a little more difficult. And that's when we have to step in as guardians and kind of tell our dogs, hey, this guy's still important. And what I often see when I do that, when I make a guardian situation for my older dog, is my older dog just sort of rises up. And they just rise up to the occasion of like, oh, I'm important again, and that means a lot. So sometimes maintaining that as long as you can within that pack structure. And I've had many times I've had 4 or 5 dogs, so I've gotten to watch this. And it's tricky, but it's doable. And
yeah, it's the translation of respecting your elders as an ask for your dogs.
yes, and to further that,
Yeah,
sometimes the
to
humans that
model
have,
it.
yeah, and the humans that have the dogs don't know they're aging. I've had people come in to the clinic and say, "Oh my God, I woke up the other day and my dog was old." And so they're having this shocked recognition that their dog is aging. And, we have a compressed period of time with these animals. And so they do age. And so for us, it's really about acceptance of, okay, well, let's change some things around and let's do some things a little different here and there and make some lifestyle changes and go from there. So
What are some, you've mentioned a few lifestyle changes, but perhaps you could elaborate a little further.
yeah, I've got a whole list of them actually, Phil. I can kind of run through about 9 of them really quick. One is reducing stairs if possible. It's one of the common things I see is as dogs age and as humans age, and these parallel with humans, most of them anyway. As they age, stairs are difficult. Going up and down is hard. So we can mitigate that with possibly ramps. We can mitigate it for the dogs with some slings, with assistance, with limiting stair use, and it's really important because we really don't want them taking a tumble and injuring themselves, especially at an older age. It's detrimental to their life. So that's number one. And number two is shifting that exercise for both dogs and humans to more frequent, shorter duration. It's so much better for their bodies. They're able to maintain it. And they can't do long duration exercise once a day anymore. So we need to make those adaptations for them as best we can. Listening for when they need help. A lot of times a dog will jump in the car and fall down. And I've watched people let them continue to jump in the car and fall down, jump in the car and fall down. Well, after the first time, the dog usually looks up at the owner like, "Could you help me, please?" And so we need to monitor that with them getting in vehicles, on couches, on beds. Just help them. If they look like they need it and they take that first tumble, then know that they're going to need it more often and keep an eye on that. And this is a little bit of an odd one, but it's sort of a dog only, but maybe not. Nail trims. So a lot of people don't trim their old dogs' nails. And what happens is those get long and their little toes get achy and hurt and arthritic and sore. And if we can teach our puppies when they're young to accept nail trims, we can go a whole period of their life, typically, if they have good exercise and not trim their nails. And then when they're old, we're going to have to trim those nails to keep the dogs out of pain in their feet. And so nail trims are really something I see all the time that are just ailing these poor little old beings. So not sure about that in the human world, but I'm sure we could talk about that. So multiple sleeping and resting spaces. I like to have dog beds in different places in the house. One of the things about healthy aging for dogs to me is keeping them engaged in life. And so if they're in one spot all day and they're just resting in one spot, they're disengaging from a lot of life around them. So I like them to be following me from room to room, from the kitchen to the office to the living room, having a place to rest there and staying engaged, because that's going to keep them cognitively functioning longer. It's going to give them a little bit of blood flow exercise that we want for that liver, for that sleep, right? And so I really like that idea. I think it's a very kind thing to do. It also helps them thermoregulate because they go through hots and colds just like humans do. And so letting them have even a space, where they can go off and hide and take a nap is really nice for them when they want to disengage. So that's a really important one that gets missed a lot. And healthy diets, favorite foods, that's a big one. You know, feeding those greens when they're young puppies is so helpful to get them trained to eat them all their life and when they're older. And it's so healthy for them. And you can add vegetables in general, lightly steamed maybe for most of the vegetables in any diet, kibble, raw food, canned food, cooked food. And it's really just helpful overall for their organ function and their digestion and everything. They are omnivores. They do eat green grass, and they eat things that are omnivoric. And so I think it's important that we kind of round out their diet, and really important that we know what their favorite foods are. So when they do get old and they do get picky and they're not eating so much or having a high food demand, we know how to get the calories into them. We know how to get the meds and the supplements into them. And that's with their favorite food. So that's a really important one. I also think we shouldn't use any chemicals around them. They have a nose that is just incredible. And if we can not use chemicals on our floors, our carpets, or on their bodies, especially as they're older, then that liver is going to stay stronger, healthier, their sleep's going to be better, and they're going to be around longer. I can guarantee that.
Wow.
Yeah. And then the last thing, I have one more thing. Sorry, I have a lot, but supplements. There's so many good products out there now, and we can do non-steroidal anti-inflammatories and herbs and many things that can really support them as they age. And so that's a lot of lifestyle changes, but they're all pretty simple actually. So.
Yeah, and I think a lot of those are not things people have already thought of. So I really appreciate you calling those out. We do have a lot of really great questions coming in from our listeners, so I'd love to turn to those. Marcel on Facebook asks, what's your best advice for cultivating a self-aware lifestyle? And it's not specified as for dogs or for people.
Oh, wow. You know, the biggest thing, Marcel and everyone, is being present in every situation, and being present means being present with what's happening outside of you and inside of you. And so self-awareness is really about being present with what you're feeling, what you're thinking. Am I thinking too much? Am I feeling too much? You know, where am I at? Do I hurt? You know, I think it's really boils down to being present, and that's an art. And it takes time. And you can always kind of call yourself back into that present situation from where you go. And I think that's probably the best I can do on that one in a short period of time. So
that's okay. Well, if it's going to be something to remember easily, it should be short. That's great.
Yeah.
Terry in Zoom is asking, what do I watch for in my old dog as she ages that is important to make sure I'm not missing some care that she needs?
You know, just being aware of the changes are so important. And again, they have a condensed life with us. You know, if we're really lucky, we get an average old age, I would say, is anywhere between 12 and 15 years. And I think they're going to tell you, if you're paying attention, what's going on in their body. The other thing is regular veterinary checkups. You know, it's really important to get them into the vet once a year, especially as they start to age, and do blood work so you can see if there's any insidious things happening that you can't tell. Watch and see if they eat less, or they want to exercise less, or their sleep habits change, or their bark changes. You know, I've had dogs that suddenly, I sing with all my dogs, so we howl. We do a lot of howling around here. And so there's sometimes when they start to get older and they're not feeling well, they stop howling, and they've been howling all their life. And so little things like that, behavioral changes, really are the factors, and getting those vet checkups are important too. And again, being present. Be present with your dog when you're walking it. You know, it's important. So
All right. Charlene on Facebook asks, what would you suggest for those who experience fatigue when caring for aging dogs or humans?
wow, I've been there, and I get that. And I think that we have to carve out some time. We all have our limits, and they're very individual. We have to carve out some time for ourselves and find what gives you, what fills you back up, because you're using all of your reserves of your heart and your being to help these animals or these people. And it can be very draining. And, you know, for me personally, when I need to take a break, I go down on one of our many beaches here in Washington, and I take a long beach walk, and I sit and I just watch the water, and I watch the eagles, and I just be for a while. And I'm slow about it, and I'm quiet about it, and I don't think too much. If I have to process something that I'm feeling, I do that and I get it over with, and then I get quiet. So everyone's different. Some people go shopping. Like some people have, you know, they want to shop. I've had clients say that, oh, I had to visit with my mother and I'm exhausted and it takes so much out of me and my heart hurts, so I'm going to go shopping. You know, so everyone's individual, and you have to find, those are extremes, but you have to find what recharges your batteries, because you're using them up, and we are not ever ready bunnies. We are not.
Right. Well, I'm noticing when it's starting to feel like you're running low, and that's the time to pay attention, not when you're already on empty for too long.
Yes, my husband Mark always says, save a little energy for yourself. He always reminds me of that because I'm doing healing work all the time. So save a little energy for yourself. So yeah.
Susan on Zoom is asking, how close is the vet community to providing mobility support for senior dogs with osteoarthritis and other mobility ailments, such as exoskeletons or exosuits? Or is that?
There's actually things like that are coming out there. We have a number of wonderful brace companies that are creating braces, wheelchairs. I'm not sure about the exoskeleton part. That's an interesting one. I haven't seen that. That'd be intriguing to look into. So, but I can't speak to that. But I know all the time we are using computer technology and very finite details to create braces for proper gaits for osteoarthritis, degenerative joint disease, all of these things. Many of my clients have signed on for some of those. They're out of my scope of expertise. I'm more body mechanics, so I give feedback as to what's happening to those people, but they're doing amazing things with that nowadays. Yeah.
So much of your talk helps us explore both a difficult topic, you know, the aging and the pain of that and the suffering and being with that, and yet you do seem to tread with soft padded feet, you know, when you talk about these issues. But I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about some of the more difficult questions. We have a question about, you know, it's always hard to know or to decide when it's time to help our old dog pass. What is your advice on how to make that hard decision?
Well, as a practitioner, I never judge when anyone makes that decision. So, but I mostly guide them and say this, and I've been saying this for years, you can see it in their eyes. And animals' eyes, there's a great quote by Martin Buber, I believe. Animals' eyes speak a great language. And they do. Humans do too, but we don't, there's a lot in between that. And there's a lot of brain behind it that's doing other things. So, but animals are pretty clear when they give you that message of, okay, I'm done. And you can accept that in your heart, and you know that there's suffering involved that you can't manage. Then that's usually the right time. It's never the easiest time. It's never, ever, ever an easy time. One of the greatest gifts is when our dogs pass on their own for us, but allowing them to pass on their own while they're suffering tremendously is something that each person has to learn to find their guidelines for. So it's a really difficult part of life that we have there. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and when we have these difficult human brains that remember things and have ideas about how we're supposed to be, and how things are, maybe sometimes not the way we wish they were, and then we think we can control it. It'd be nice to just have that present mind to allow things to be. There's Ken on Facebook is asking, are there signals that we as caregivers should look for ourselves to notice when we are drifting away from the pack? And pack is in all caps, so maybe it's when we're drifting away from that attitude of the pack, but I think it's also about, do we ever turn our backs on our four-leggeds?
Well, I think I'll answer both of those. It sounds like our four-leggeds and our two-leggeds to me. And I think we all periodically can go through that all the time in life. And in reality, walking that road of the pack is a conscious effort that we have to make. Eventually it just slides from your life, and then you become the Dalai Lama or someone like that. But it's for us average humans, with what our world around us presents us, it's a conscious effort. And so I think being gentle with yourself and recognizing that if you try to check in with your heart first and not your mind, you're going to have an easier time being patient, accepting, compassionate, and kind than you are if you're thinking about it. And you have to think about it first, because you have to see pack. You have to see that in your mind. But I really feel like we have to cut ourselves some slack sometimes with that, and drifting away from our two-leggeds and our four-leggeds. Sometimes everyone's different. Sometimes we need to be alone. Sometimes we just need to do that because we need to process life around that's been hitting us from all angles. And this is an incredible time for that, with everything going on in our current world, and that we are bombarded with things, and so I think it's okay if you're gravitating away from the pack once in a while, but always know that that's in your toolbox. It's something you can use. Yeah.
It's one of our big belongings. To go a little further down this question, many of us have been using this as a time to kind of retreat towards a more closeness within our pack. And I would love you to imagine with us and to share, how do you see the world when packs are working? What would the pack of packs be like? A community of packs? Or if you saw this as a movement of people living the pack way, what do you think that world would be like?
I think that's sort of my TED wish, is that people would listen to these messages and teachings that we can get from our animals and bring those out into the world to to find mindfulness, understanding, compassion, acceptance for the world around them, and to help others that are in need. That would be my ultimate vision of that, is really if we could all be cooperative and have a cooperative spirit for one another and sense what others need, and just with great joy in our hearts be able to understand that and fill that void, just like our dogs do for us, then wouldn't that be a beautiful place? I mean, so it may be a little Pollyanna, but it's what I hold out for creating in the world, trying to remind people that we can bump up against this all the time. We can, it's right here. We have these tools. So
Pollyanna's plans for practicing presence in her pack could be a sequel, maybe.
Yeah, there you go.
But why not plan? Why not plan for what's possible?
Yeah.
Can you think of, and Miriam is asking on Zoom, could you speak to the value of enrichment activities, such as nose work for aging dogs?
Yes, I love nose work for aging dogs. And any canine enrichment. I just actually received a book on canine enrichment, so I haven't read it yet, Miriam, but I'm intrigued by it. But it goes back to that engagement, and that healthy aging for the dog is keeping them engaged. Healthy aging for the human is keeping us engaged. And so having that ability to engage socially, mentally, sense-wise for a dog with their nose is fabulous. Some of these dogs can't see and they can't hear, but they're incredible sniffers. I used to test dogs for an organization called Working Dogs for Conservation, wonderful organization that trains unadoptable dogs with a lot of energy to go all over the world and find invasive species, ivory caches, invasive plants, mussels, all sorts of things like that. So they're out there sniffing all the time. And I tested, one of my favorite dogs I ever tested for them was a blind dog from birth. And that dog had the most amazing nose. And now he has a job up in Canada sniffing for invasive mussels and bolts. He's great at it, so he's helping our ecosystem. So I really think that engagement for them keeps their longevity just like it does for us. So yeah, I love it.
Wow, that's a really profound vision of being able to contribute deeply, at a time when many people would think that's not when you make your biggest contributions, but it certainly can be.
Yeah.
Sari on Zoom asks, what are some of the signs of dementia in dogs?
Oh boy. Well,
is it more fear?
Yeah, it can be fear. It can be fear that is not warranted. And we always have to be careful with that, because changes in cognitive function can also look like changes in vision, hearing, other things in the body that can create fear. So there's veterinary need for that, for examining your dog. That's, at least yearly or every 6-month exam. And but the other changes are, oftentimes we see these odd behaviors. Sometimes they don't recognize us. That's an odd thing. And that's in an extreme case. Sometimes they will walk into a corner and they won't know how to get out. And you'll find your dog standing in a corner staring. And that's a common one. They'll get stuck behind something that's been in your house and never moved for all these years, and they'll get stuck there. So there's a lot of that. Sometimes aggression comes into that. There's dietary issues too. They forget to eat. They forget to drink water. So it's basically doggy dementia. And it's very, very similar to human dementia in many ways. It's one of the big parallels that we have. So yeah,
Now,
there's
go
a
ahead.
good book that someone wrote, and I apologize, I don't know the name of it, but the Whole Dog Journal carries it, and you can go on there, and it's a woman wrote a book about the doggy dementia issues. So it's lovely. Yeah.
Well, Elizabeth, you've really helped us to explore so many different aspects and dimensions of everything from dementia to a strong sense of pack affiliation and a way to be in everyday living that I think will make things, I can only think that they make things either flow more easily or just all around better for everyone involved. Let me ask you one final question, which is, what would you most like to leave us with?
You know, I think I'd like to leave everyone with the thought that we should always remember that with our elderly, whether it's a human or a dog, they have a tremendous amount of wisdom that they've accumulated in their life. And for me, that creates a great sense of respect and reverence and gives me peace. And so sometimes when I am a little afraid at the nerve of because of aging, I always remember that this person has, or this animal has just had this incredible life, and it's gifted me with things that it might take me a whole lifetime to figure out. It's given us gifts. And so I really think if we can think in that format, we can easily slide into those pack tools, in and out, in and out, in and out. Because whether it's human or dog, they really are wise beings after they've accumulated it all. So seen it all, done it all. So yeah, I hope that everyone can kind of honor them for that. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you so much for honoring us with your gift and for sharing us all of the wisdom that you've accumulated from so many animals of so many types. It's such a great gift. Thank you again so much. And so we're really reaching the end of our hour. I'm Phil Klein saying thank you so much for attending TEDx Snow Isle Libraries. We have several upcoming events in the coming week and a half or so. So we hope you can enjoy those together with us again soon. Thank you, and have a great rest of the day or evening wherever you may be.
Thank you,
TEDx
Jeff.
Snow Isle Libraries 2020 has been made possible through the generous support of corporate and community-based organizations who believe in the power of ideas and information. We'd like to thank these organizations for partnering with us. Coastal Community Bank, serving the financial needs of customers throughout Western Washington. Coastal Community Bank, where community is not just their middle name, it's how they do business. Community Transit of Snohomish County, providing public transportation alternatives and solutions which help people get from where they are to where they want to be. Overdrive, always innovating to help libraries transform by providing digital content such as ebooks, audiobooks, magazines, and video for public libraries. Washington Energy Services, providing heating, cooling, and other service solutions to help Puget Sound residents save energy and live better. And our founding partner, the Snow Isle Libraries Foundation, committed to mobilizing people and resources to expand the reach of Snow Isle Library services, promote civic engagement, and foster a lifetime of learning.